Real people, real opinions, Real Talk Radio. The multi-award winning Niall Boylan Show.
Ireland's classic hits.
The idea is pedestrianising a lot of streets. The proposals include making Parliament Street traffic free, also College Green, Dame Street, George's Street. It goes on. They also want to make a plaza area pedestrianised at Customs House Quay, Beresford Place, Bachelor's Walk, Aston Quay. New traffic arrangements are also suggested for Westland Row. And it goes on and on. It's part of the National Transport Plan for 2023. But the other part of the plan has been and always will be to bring in a congestion charge as well. So let's, in a nutshell, just say what they're trying to do is get cars out of the city completely, apart from deliveries. So they want cars out of the city. This is all part of what they're doing in London as well, with a massive congestion charge of whatever, £10 just to get in and out of the city, which is really unfair on people who work in the city, I suppose, to some degree, because they have to pay the £10. So it's all part of, inverted commas, climate change, close inverted commas, to rid the world of cars, these evil diesel and petrol burning cars. I love them, by the way, can I just point out? I hate electric cars. Anyway, so is this a good idea? Do you think it's a good idea? Would it be a better place if we didn't have cars in the city, in Galway, Dublin, Limerick, Cork, I mentioned Limerick already. Would it be better? Let me know. The number is, as usual, 087 188 0008. Now, let me go to William first. William, hi, how are you? William. Why is it?
Hello, Niall. It's lovely to speak to you.
Yeah.
Fabulous show. Keep up the good work anyway.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay, William? Okay. I think William's having a little difficulty hearing me, Jane, so maybe we could just give him a quick call back on another line. As I said already, the whole plan here is, and I'm just going to read it out to you, that the new plan from the National Transport Authority and Dublin City Council would see a reallocation of road space to public transport. Now, remember that public transport is not there yet. So this is always the problem people have, is putting the cart before the horse, so to speak. Cyclists and pedestrians. Now, of course, we do have cyclists and pedestrians a lot during the summer in Ireland, but not during the winter, because we get pretty bad winters in this country. This is not, Spain or somewhere fancy like that gets reasonably good weather for a certain period of the year, even in the summertime. So look, this is probably one of the worst summers. Contrary to what the climate change people will tell you, this is probably the mildest summer we've had in quite a while. I mean, we were promised a heat wave there 2 weeks ago and it didn't really materialise. We got 2 days. I'm looking out the window now and it's raining. And it's predicted to rain again tomorrow. And the temperature has dropped drastically. I'm sure people have noticed that, by the way. The temperature went from, I think, 26 on Saturday. And it's now down at 13 or 14 degrees, depending on what part of the country you're happening in. Anyway, so what impact will this have, on businesses in the areas? I mean, do you think it's an ambitious plan? And the idea of charging people then, when you do all this, of charging people £10 maybe or €10 to drive into the city, is that a good idea? Would that discourage people or discourage drivers from driving into the city and owning cars in the first place? Let me know what you think. The number is 087 188 0008, 087 188 0008. Will it discourage car drivers from coming into the city? Now, I have William back there now. You should be able to hear me now. William, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. I think it was Poltergeist on the line.
There was. The gremlins are on the line, William. So, William, do you think it'll work? Do you think, a congestion charge and pedestrianising areas and of all the cities, the major cities, do you think it would make a difference?
Well, we're in a different world now, you see, because of climate change. We have our responsibilities to Europe to lower our carbon footprint. So now the real challenge is that we're used to driving in our cars, and I think people think because they have a licence that they're entitled to drive up on top of bikes, Now, bikes have a responsibility too as well to obey the rules.
Yeah.
So, but the real issue here is that there is no enforcement of law and order in this country. So I walk, I cycle, and I drive. And I have a responsibility to the pedestrians when I'm driving. I have a responsibility then when I'm cycling that I don't go through lights and I don't drive in front of drivers. But just because I have insurance and a licence and I'm driving a dangerous vehicle that can flatten a pedestrian or someone on a bike, doesn't mean I still have to obey rules, but there's no enforcement. That's the problem. If you look for the last, as long as I can remember now, being civically minded, I have not yet seen the Gardaí enforce virtually any rules on the road or anywhere else, and that's the problem.
Well, particularly when it comes to, I mean, motorists do get done every now and again. Mind you, not as much as they probably should. But we don't see any enforcement when it comes to cyclists. I see cyclists cycling on the path. They never stop at traffic lights.
No.
So, you know, and these scooters, these electric scooters, these are lethal, these yokes.
Well, you see, there again lies the problem, the complacency of to have proper, like, what is the law on electric scooters, right?
There is no law.
Yeah, there is no law. So that shouldn't be the case, though. There should be no leeway in between there is no law. There should be, law and order should be there, and there isn't. There should be no ambiguity about the law. And that's where the problem lies. Now, I love cycling, but for instance, if I stop at the traffic lights, which I stop at the traffic light, and I go on, there's a picture of a bicycle. In other words, that's my safe area to stay on. And cars just drive up on top of that with impunity. Now, a brother of mine said that, went into the local Gardaí and said it to them. And more or less, he was told to get stuffed. They don't give a damn. You know,
we should all be able to use the space we have on the road, you know, reasonably peacefully together.
Well, everyone should be. There's mutual respect. It should be.
Yeah.
But the real problem is, like, you should be entitled to drive without being hampered by cyclists. Cyclists should be safe on the road. The one constant is that there's no enforcement of either law. And the Gardaí have a responsibility which they haven't enforced the law.
Well,
we have a social contract.
My next topic a little bit later on is about the Garda Síochána. Look, and we all know, unfortunately, we have a problem with the Garda Síochána at the moment, is that we don't have enough of them. So that's a huge problem.
Well, it doesn't matter if you had 10 times the amount of Gardaí. If they're going to do the same thing, which is not enforce the laws that are there, it doesn't matter how many Gardaí you have. That's the problem. We have a social contract here. I go to work. I pay my taxes. The Gardaí are paid from their taxes. He who pays the piper should call the tune. When I go in to make a complaint about something, the Gardaí don't want to know it. It's like as if I committed the crime. Now, what I'd like to see is a vote of no confidence from the people of Limerick City on the issue of policing, on the issue of the Gardaí not enforcing the law. I have no confidence in the Gardaí that they will enforce the laws because they have never enforced the laws properly in this country. All you hear is them cribbing and crying about their wages and this and that. They're well paid. If they want to discuss that, we can get a forensic accountant in to have a look at their wages, and we'll see quite clearly what they are being paid. They were on the radio, they were on the television there the other day, crying about having to do paperwork and all this rubbish. Every force has to do a certain amount of paperwork.
And what about these congestion charges, or the plan for a congestion charge? In other words, if you do want to drive into the city, maybe in a few years' time, they'll bring in this charge where you'll have to pay a tenner just to drive in.
Well, I suppose that's called nudging. You have to nudge people in a direction. And you know yourself, if you have to pay if you have to pay a tenner, that will alter your way of thinking, but it'll also alter the way you do things.
Yeah, but here's the thing, William. I couldn't care less because I never drive into Dublin City, right?
Yes.
Apart from to go to the radio station, which is down near the 3 Arena. So I literally come off out of the tunnel and I'm like 100 yards around the corner. So I don't have to go into Dublin City. I hate going into Dublin City. It's a nightmare, right? But here's the thing. That's okay for me, but there are people who work in the city. And it's a bit unfair on them to expect them to pay, 20 quid in tenner in, tenner out every single day. That would be a bit much.
Do you think we can be all things to all people? We cannot. What we have to do is have better public infrastructure, have proper...
sure, William, for years we've been talking about that, and we still haven't.
Yes, but that's the solution. That's the solution. We can't just say we can't do this because there's a certain amount of people disenfranchised. This is one of the wealthiest countries in the world. People can well afford congestion charges. The opulence that is around...
William, I don't think they can. People are they're robbing people to pay Paul at the moment. You know what I mean?
Not at all. if we look at the figures properly, the average industrial wage, how much is that?
44,000.
Which is, I think that's a lot of money. Like, you cut your cloth accordingly.
Well,
There's people there.
it's not a lot of money when you have the cost of housing in Dublin currently at the moment, for example, or most cities, particularly in Dublin, when you have that kind of cost of housing, the cost of living, the cost of diesel, the cost of heating, electricity, it's all gone up.
That's the average industrial wage. There's people on an awful lot more as well.
And people on less.
an awful lot less.
Yeah.
But if you look at the people on less, if you were smoking, for instance, cigarettes are 10 times the price of fillet steak, right? Drink is what's it, €7 a pint. Do you know, you have to cut your cloth accordingly. People spend money on stuff that's damaging their health. They spend, like, you just can't say we can't afford congestion charges. We have a wealthy country. People spend an awful lot of money on the wrong things. We have massive obesity. You don't get obesity by you have to afford food, the wrong type of food to be obese. So there's enough money in the country.
So you're okay with the congestion charges if it changes the bad habits?
If it's targeted properly and in conjunction with the money going towards infrastructure. You can't just say congestion charges, but there's no way of getting into Dublin City any other way. You have to. There's terrible unprofessionalism in this country, and we need professional. We're paying for services from our government, but we're not getting professional.
Well, you've got a Minister for Transport who's telling everybody, so for example, not to be flying on planes, but he hasn't been in the country in the last 2 or 3 months. He's flying all over the world.
Well,
so
it's a tough job trying to run a country. You see,
do you have faith in the government to run the country?
That's not really a question. A government is a reflection of its people, and the people here.
I'd like to think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it should be a reflection of the people.
Well, should be is a better word. Yeah.
And the people here. Yeah, it's hard. It's a complex issue to see. The people here expect too much in a sense. Well, what it is like, for instance,
I don't think we expect too much, William. I think we expect to be treated reasonably well.
But you see, like for instance, we tried to bring in water charges, right?
Yeah.
And people kicked up about water charges. Now, my own view on that was we should pay for water. Because it's a vital.
But the argument at the time was we're paying a lot of tax and we're paying for it in taxation. That was the argument.
But if you do not charge people for something, they'll waste it. It would put manners on people. If you don't charge, the most people, the amount of wastage in this country is horrific. You give people a certain amount free and then you should charge. We should have had meters, but the government backed down.
Well, William, isn't that not what democracy is all about? When 120,000 people walk down O'Connell Street.
I think it was Aristotle, said that the more people do something, the more wrong it is.
No, what I'm saying is 120,000 people protested in O'Connell Street against the water charges. That's democracy at work. That's how democracy works.
They're entitled to, of course they're entitled to protest.
Well, that's why they back down.
I could get 100,000 people, or maybe 500,000 people on the street to protest against paying taxes, and they'd come out in their droves and say, let the rich people pay for everything. The rich people are working hard enough and paying enough taxes.
You've got a point. Stay there for a second, William, if you can. Let me go to John as well.
No problem.
John, hi, how are you?
How are you, Niall?
How you
ready, land?
Well, you've heard William. He doesn't have an objection to, moving forward, progression, provided the infrastructure is put in eventually, that we should have a congestion charge to discourage people from bad habits of driving into the city and congesting the city.
You know what, Niall? Is William there paid by Leo Martin and Ryan?
I'm self-employed. I work 70 years.
Are you sure you're self-employed, are you?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm self-employed. I'm just...
Yeah.
I have a new valve in my heart to the pacemaker, right? I'm technically ill, and I go to work every 6 days a week. I work about 80 hours a week. I'm not paid by Micheál Martin. So, but I'm living in the real world where things have to be paid for. I'm 100%. If you want to check out, you can talk to my accountant, and he'll explain to you what taxes that I pay.
I think he's just been flippant, to be honest with you.
You're after saying there already. So you want people who have a car, a private car, to pay congestion charge to sue climate change agenda that nobody in this country voted for, a climate change plan that Leo Martin and Ryan came up with forced on the Irish people today from Europe and all the rest of it. And you want the Irish people to just go, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think that's a marvellous idea. What happened to democracy? People have their private cars today. They're entitled to drive their private cars on the public roads today, whether Leo likes it, Martin likes it, or Ryan likes it, or Dublin City Council for that matter likes it. The fact of the matter is, your congestion comes from the fact that Dublin City Council put and you said you were a cyclist, didn't you?
He's everything. He's a cyclist, he's a driver, and he's a pedestrian.
Yeah. But your congestion charge or your congestion today on public roads comes from the so-called Dublin City Council cycle lanes that were forcefully put on the roads today. The cars were pushed one direction, and then these big, massive cycle lanes were put on the road, and then the government.
Well, now hold on. Now, hang on, John. With respect, the idea of putting cycle lanes on the road isn't such a bad idea, if indeed it keeps cyclists safe and motorists away from them. And I do agree with you. There are cycle lanes in the country that are in ridiculous places where there's no room for a car, and it's actually dangerous, to be honest with you, if you ask me, in some situations.
Niall, let me say this.
Yeah.
Right? Let me say this. You go into Dublin City today, and I don't drive a car, but I do know people who do. You have a cycle lane that's double the size on each side of the road. You have then a one lane of cars going up and down. And then the government and Martin and the whole lot of them are going on about, congestion. Dublin City Council caused that congestion. Ryan caused that congestion today. The Green Party
hold on. Hang on. To be fair, now I'm not a fan of Dublin City Council or Eamon Ryan for that matter, or the government, but the government didn't cause the congestion. And don't get me wrong, some of the stupid ideas they came up with didn't help, but they didn't cause the congestion. The congestion is caused by the population increasing and more people having cars. We've now got 2.2 million cars on the road. So that's what's caused the congestion.
And you have cycle lanes each side, Niall.
And bad public transport, by the way, is also a reason.
Hang on, Niall. Hang on, these cycle lanes have been doubled in size.
Well, no, what happens is you have a bus lane, you have a... Yeah, but okay, I understand what you're saying. You'll have a bus lane, you'll have a cycle lane, and then you have a lane for the cars. So in other words, a road that used to have 3 lanes of traffic now only has 1 lane because you've got a cycle lane and a bus lane. Yeah.
Because they're anti-car. And the whole idea around this was to remove the car off the road. But that is the future. That's what they're trying to do, isn't it? That's what they want to do. In what future? Who voted for that future?
Well, I didn't vote for it, but William is okay with it.
Neither did the Irish people. So what are they going to... And again, these admissions today...
Okay, sorry, what are you trying to say there, William? Sorry.
What I'm trying to say, what's the solution? Will we have children cycling bikes getting killed? Or do we have a problem with obesity?
I'll tell you, William, what the solution is.
Please?
Do you really want me to tell you what the solution is?
No, hang on. Let him finish the question he's asking you first.
Please. We have an awful problem here with obesity, right? We want our children to be able to go to school safely, walk and cycle as part of a solution. Go on a car when they can't do that. But we want them safe. So what's your solution to keeping the children safe? Is it to ban children from cycling?
Okay.
Ban cyclists altogether just because you have a licence and you think you can drive every day as you please?
Hang on there for a minute, Will.
What is your solution? Give me a solution.
Hang on there for a minute now. Obesity, number 1, is a personal choice. It's like smoking and drugs.
Well, not for children. It's not a personal choice. Well, hang on.
So
now, John, don't simplify something that's quite serious, right? When it comes to being an adult, yes, you have a choice to put food in your mouth. When it comes to being a child, you are at the hands of your parents. So the parents are the ones who decide what a child eats.
Hang on. If somebody is overweight today, that is not my problem.
No, it's not your problem. But it is. Hold on, it may not be your problem, but it is a societal problem.
A person's individual problem themselves, not society's. Period.
Well, it is societies because, unfortunately, if somebody's very overweight, they will end up with health problems, going to hospital. Taxes have to be paid to fund the hospitals. So it does become a societal problem if many people are overweight.
Into the cars. Should we put the bicycles into the cars and drive the children to school in the cars and put the bicycles on the roof? Is that what you're saying we should do?
No, William. What I'm saying to you, William,
give me a solution for cyclists.
This idea that every problem in the world is down to the Irish people It's not. It's down to people's personal choice. If you're obese today, that's got nothing to do with me. It's got nothing to do with the Irish people today. That has got to do with you as an individual.
But it's lack of exercise.
So stop pushing that onto the Irish people today.
Okay, well, it is lack of exercise, William, but it's also putting the wrong food in your mouth.
It's a lack of exercise.
Well, hang on. With the great respect, I was only watching a documentary about this tonight. You know, the lack of exercise is about 10% of the problem. But the other part of the problem when it comes to obesity is eating the wrong food.
Yes, but the problem with obesity,
period.
The problem with obesity is people have too much money. They're feeding too much to the wrong food.
Would you stop out of that, William?
William, you are talking shit tonight. Really are talking shit.
William, no, I'm not buying the idea that people have too much money. The majority of people in this country don't have too much money, William.
Well, I'll tell you who have the people that waste the most money are the people who get the money for nothing, or taxpayers' money. It's a proven fact that the so-called underprivileged, I say so-called now, underprivileged, are the people who feed their children the wrong type of food because they get the money for nothing and they waste it.
Well, I don't know if that's the reason why, but you are right in relation to statistically, it's a class issue. Yes, people from bad socioeconomic backgrounds do tend to feed the wrong children the wrong food, and that's why you will see more takeaways in working class areas.
Yeah, but the problem is, you're using the word
maybe that's
class.
laziness more than anything else.
Yes, the word working class, it should be workers and non-workers, not working class, because wealthy people work and people on bad wages work. But working class, but we're calling people who never worked working class. That's the problem. So that is the...
Okay, getting back to the original argument, John, just take your focus just for a second. I'm going to come to Gerben in a minute, but take your focus off William for a second. John.
Doesn't solve anything.
Okay, well, hang on. John, take your focus off William for a second, and let's focus on the actual question I asked you. So they want to bring in a congestion charge, which is not unusual, by the way. They have congestion charges in London. They have them in other cities now as well.
The point is, Niall, I'll put me in this situation now. If I had a private car today and I'm driving around the city, why should I be paying a congestion charge for something the government, Leo, Martin and Ryan created themselves? I have no interest in paying any taxes to a government who created this congestion themselves. They put cycle lanes in, and not alone did they put them in, but they doubled them on the road, where there's only one single piece of road for the traffic, the cars and whatever.
Well, I just told you why that is, because they want to discourage cars off the road.
Yeah, but the point is, Niall, we live in a democratic society. As I said earlier on there tonight, do we live in China and Russia now, where we've been told how to live, how to shit and how to eat?
Okay, well, hang on, stay there a second. Let me go to Gerben as well. Gerben, hi, how are you?
Hi, now.
Hi,
well,
nice to talk to you, Gerben.
So thanks a lot. I'm so happy that today, so at night time instead of during the day, much better, because that I'm a bit more like a night owl, as I mentioned before.
Good.
But the issue, congestion charges, I think they could only be introduced if there's enough park and ride facilities. I drive, I cycle, I walk. I used to live in Dublin. I now I live in Limerick. Doesn't really matter. I think that all towns over 20,000 should be basically without cars. Only citizens parking should be allowed. Residence parking, like in Amsterdam, where I used to live. I was a councillor once upon a time in Amsterdam. There was a referendum, a plebiscite held among all people about banning cars from the town centre. There was a lot of engagement from businesses. And that was a great idea. First, there was a low turnout, but thankfully, after 20 years, now measures were introduced about citizens parking. There is also visitors parking. So they get a visitors pass for anybody who needs to go visit somebody who lives in a town centre, who just needs to be there for a particular reason to visit somebody in a nursing home nearby and needs to park their car. So it's not that you are against cars or something.
But Gerben, can I stop you for a second? No, hang on. Gerben,
we need free public transport. The public transport.
There's what I was going to say.
Too much.
Okay, so that was the point I was going to make. It's all well and good you talking about Amsterdam, but Amsterdam has a wonderful, and the towns and villages around it have wonderful public transport. We don't.
Yes, and that should be free ideally. And
yes.
Why have the public transport prices been hiked over and over, including by the Greens I used to be a part of, but they're not anymore. And I'll
It
have
should
to
be
be
free.
so
You're right.
transported
Public
that,
transport
that
should be
was
free.
highlighted before. Yeah.
And I think people would warm to the idea quicker if public transport was efficient and it was free.
Exactly. That's it. Exactly. So,
But hang on, Gerben, you know the Irish government. That's not going to happen.
Well, it is going to happen if we make this a referendum, a plebiscite, right during the local election. That'd be an excellent item. And then all political parties and independents need to have a view on this. And there'll be a huge engagement with the people in Dublin. Why not?
But what about
Niall, people would not warm to that. Irish people today would not want
hang on.
the fact they can't use a private...
I know I wouldn't be happy about it personally, John, but I just love my car. But most people, if they thought they could have an efficient, free public transport system, they would use it.
No, the fact is people want to use their cars. And you are discriminating against people, private car owners with this. And that's what's going on. I don't care what that chap's saying about Amsterdam. I don't live in Amsterdam. The fact of the matter is, if you have a private car today, you are being discriminated against by this government today and the Greens for having a car and having your own private car today and being effectively run off the road. For climate change that has only got one biased narrative today, where is the alternative evidence for the so-called climate change today?
Should we have more cars on the road, so we'll get more cars? Are we short the cars on the road? Are we short the cars on the road? Is that what you're saying? We all should drive. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying why should anybody today
What about my rights
who
to
has
the
a
cyclist?
private car today be put off the road to sue Eamon Ryan and the Green Party?
No,
and the
we're
government
Europeans.
Today?
We have
Why?
European obligations. You know that, don't you? We're
I couldn't
European.
care less about Europe. I couldn't
Well,
care less
look,
about
the road you were driving on was paid for by Europe.
I have no obligations to Europe.
You have.
Now, hang on for a second, William. I don't want to get into a long debate about our part in Europe and our role in Europe. And this old thing that's trotted out every single time about, the roads were paid for by the EU. But hang on for a second. If we hadn't have joined what they used to call it was the common market at the time.
By the Irish people.
Yeah, they would have been paid for by Ireland anyway. We would have progressed either way. We have oil and gas in this country. We have farming lands that were left idle and empty because of the EU. So we would have made enough money to produce those roads anyway. So that's not really an argument.
But not within the same time frame.
We would have. We absolutely would have. We absolutely would have.
You can see well, you're complaining about the way.
No, I'm not. By the way, I'm not giving out about being part of the EU. I'm just saying, don't trot that argument out about the roads. It's not true.
Well, I have to disagree. Well, we're living in a democracy, and I disagree with you, Niall.
You're entitled to disagree with me, William.
Well, the facts, Niall, if you want the facts bear out, if you look into this properly, you will see that we wouldn't have the roads that we have now only for the EC, and we have obligations that there's room for everyone. But we can't
We don't have obligations. We don't. The fact of the matter is...
we do legally have obligations.
Over and over again.
Okay, but
no obligations to Europe.
Okay, but hang on the two of you just for a second. Let me just go back to Gerben. Gerben, I'm liking, what you're saying to me, and I'm looking at it with rose-tinted glasses, and it all sounds wonderful and jolly and happy and Amsterdam, and we're all cycling around in our little tandems and everything else.
Transport free.
And free transport. But this is Ireland, and I cannot see that for a minute happening. And by the way, the infrastructure is completely different in Amsterdam. The roads are completely different in Amsterdam. It's not the same. You cannot compare like with like.
No, but it's like an old time takes time. And then I came to the point about the park and ride. When I came from Limerick to Dublin the other day by car, I wanted to park my car in the Dublin park and ride in Red Cow. It was full. And when I came the next time, it was full. There's not enough park and ride facilities. Park and rides should then be free if you park your car in the park and ride. That you go to the town centre for free by public transport. That should be in the ideal situation. There's never any spot for me in the park and ride. I'm sure there's plenty of people having the same problem. And that should be changed. And that's all about infrastructure and about the congestion charges. This
is the problem. When you want, and the idea or the principle behind what the government is doing is to reduce the amount of traffic in the city. And you've got people who are living in satellite towns all over Ireland, for the different cities, like, for example, living in Lucan or Maynooth or Kildare, whatever it is, outside Dublin, and they have to drive into work because the population of Dublin is 1.3 million. at night, but 1.7 million by day. So it increases during the day with people going to work. So they have to get in somehow. Public transport is not adequate because it can't service everywhere because it just isn't financially viable to go into the nooks and crannies of places where there isn't a high population. So people have to use their cars.
Yeah, but if you take off less cars from the roads, and that's including electric cars, by the way.
I've no time for electric cars. They're useless things.
Yeah, so even electric cars, but it's still cars. Any car should be so there should be a reduction in that also will be, because you probably heard about the road stats, there are doubled, that also reduces the road debt, but it's another thing for another day. But if people then park their car in the park and ride, there'll be less traffic, less cars on the road, basically. Only people. Yeah, so that would.
Yeah.
Can I ask William and John?
Yes.
If you ever take public transport in Dublin, would you be willing to use the public transport if you park your car in the park and ride, for example?
Okay, so if the park and rides were better, essentially, would you be willing to use public transport?
No, Niall. If I was driving a car today, and I know people who do drive cars, so that's why I'm on the phone tonight to you. Number one is I would not want just public transport or buses and all that kind of stuff. If I have a car today, I have every goddamn right to drive my car on public roads. And I don't care about Amsterdam, and I don't care about Europe. I don't care what goes on in these places. The fact of the matter is, this is discrimination against Irish drivers today by Martin, Ryan, and Leo.
Okay, let William answer the question. William, I'm assuming you would be quite happy to use public transport.
Well,
no.
Recently...
No, we didn't let William answer. Go ahead, William.
Sorry, my apologies, man.
That's no problem. Recently, my van, the engine blew on it, so I had to use public transport. And I actually found it quite good in Limerick. I'm lucky where there's a bus stop opposite me, and it brings me into town. Limerick is quite small, but the transport is fairly good. But also then I started using the bike more, and I was delighted because you get fitter and all that. And I have no problem with public transport. It's very good. It's $1.95 for a trip. It's very reasonable. You haven't the hassle of parking then, and you haven't the hassle of traffic because the bus
that's
lanes
your choice, William.
are great.
Nobody else's.
The bus lanes are
that's your
great.
choice, William.
Yes, I have a choice and you have a choice. You can choose not to use.
And a private car owner today has the choice
I'm
to
a
use
private
that
car owner.
road.
I have a car and a van. I drive at work when I drive for work, and I have my own private car. I love Sunday driving when the roads are quiet. I bring my mother
William,
for a
can I
spin,
ask you a question?
It's nice. You can, of course.
Okay, this climate. I'm sorry, Niall, for taking over there for a second.
No, you're not taking
William,
over.
I want to ask you and the other chap another question. This climate action plan today, nobody in Ireland voted for it. So why is it being pushed on the Irish people?
I kind of agree with you, but then here's the thing: nobody voted for it. You're right, but you voted for the government. Well, you didn't personally, but you voted for the government. And then when you vote for a government, you're giving them a mandate to change laws. That's the way the system works. You don't have an opportunity to vote as a citizen, unless it's a referendum, of course. But you have an opportunity to vote for a government who you believe will act on your behalf. That's the way politics works. That's the way government works.
I've said this before, if I may.
Yeah.
The fact that
they don't have to ring you every time they want to make a change. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but hang on, Niall. Nobody voted for this government today. Nobody. They put themselves into government.
Well, no, that's true, in fairness. But here's the thing, right? If it had been an alternate government, let's say, for example, it had been Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin, which is probably more closer to what people voted for, the same decisions would have been made because they have the same policies. So it wouldn't make a difference.
Most people voted for Sinn Féin, and the only reason why Leo, Martin and Ryan got together was, we're not going to let Sinn Féin into office. So we'll just go and take over. One minute there was no...
Would you like Sinn Féin to be in government?
You had them clowns in power.
Would you like Sinn Féin to be in government?
Niall, anybody who... I said this before to you. Anybody who takes over in the next government, and there is an election next year...
I know. I can tell you now, I'm going to put money in Paddy Powers. I know who the next government's going to be. It'll be Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin.
Fine Gael and Sinn Féin.
No, it'll be Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin. You wait and see.
Fianna Fáil and Sinn, probably without Martin at this stage.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, whoever takes over has to start listening to the Irish people.
And the Greens will be gone, by the way. They'll be obliterated.
Not before they destroy this country beyond recognition today.
Yeah, sorry, Gerben. Gerben, are you a Green? Do you? Are you a Green? Are you a Green Party supporter? I imagine you are you?
So I used to be a Green Party supporter. I'm not anymore. I'm now with the Party for Animal Welfare, which is a new political party for animals, for people, and for planets.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I still support green values, but I don't support the Green Party as such. If that's what you mean.
Yeah, no. Because I was just wondering, because you sound you've come across like you may be a supporter of the Green Party or that kind of climate action and veganism.
I used to be a Green councillor in the past, and so like in Amsterdam, talk about Amsterdam, and so I used to be a Green Party member in Dublin and in Limerick, but I'm not anymore. I'm now a supporter of a different political party, the Party for Animal Welfare.
All right, but listen, I have to take a break anyway. I better take a break. The number is 087 188 0008. The question I'm simply asking you is, would you be in favour of a well, I know you wouldn't be in favour. Would you object is probably a better word. Would you madly object like John? William doesn't mind.
Classic Hits Radio.
All right, keep texting. William, just stay there. The number is 087 188 0008. William, stay there, will you please, for a second?
I'm listening.
Yeah, good man. Because I know Jane was saying that you can't stay too long because you'll be up early. She said you're up at 4 o'clock in the morning. What are you doing up at 4 o'clock in the morning, William?
I'm a butcher here in Limerick.
All right.
And I get up early. I can't sleep because after my heart operation, my legs and hands clamp up. So when I can't sleep, I like to get up. I might go to work early for a few hours, go home and go into the garden, and then maybe sit down and listen to a bit of music or something. And, that's the way I work around my life. I have to accommodate my heart condition.
Right, okay, good man. Well, keep fit. Now, okay, stay there for a second, William. Let me go to Billy as well. Billy, hi, how are you?
Hey, yeah, no, how are you keeping?
Good. Billy, I mean, look, this plan that they have, I mean, the plan is to get rid of cars. That's the plan. But they're coming with all sorts of plans.
Niall, you know what? In the long run, great idea. Get rid of cars in the city centre. But before you do that, build a metro, build a Dart Underground, build a transport system that works. Because if you don't, you're forcing people out of the city. It's never going to work. It's all stick, no carrot. And
that's all well and good for people who are, within walking distance of that system. Now, you look at, for example, what they're doing in London at the moment, right? So they've great public transport in London. So the majority of people really don't care about the fact that it's a €10 congestion charge. But there are people who are outside of that public transport system who's not available to them. And that's the way it will be here too. And, some of them are doctors and nurses, and they have to pay €10 or £10 every time they come into the city.
And Niall, here's the thing. If they built a public transport system, and they've been talking about building a metro in Dublin since 1973, it's going back that long, since 1973, 50 years. If they built it then, we'd have it now, as most of the rest of Western Europe does have a metro. Didn't
the Chinese offer to build a monorail for free?
I'm not sure if they did or not, but I saw... So I was on Twitter the other day. Someone posted up the CIE Metro from 1973, the logo that CIE released, and then I found a report from the year 2000 where I can't remember the minister.
But you didn't they build
the Minister for Trans?
The Hilton Hotel in Ballymun. It's not called the Hilton anymore. I don't know what it's called now.
No, it was not under the towers in Ballymun that there was a metro station.
The metro, it's under the hotel. There's a metro station in the basement of the hotel, but there was never any tracks to it.
But they never built it. But
no.
Niall, the thing is, if they built a metro, and they had going out to places like Maynooth, going down as far as Cherrywood or Sandyford, all these places outside. You build the stations, you build park and rides there, as Gervin said. People travel to the park and rides in their car, they get on the metro and they go into the city centre. That's how this is meant to.
Yeah, but that's the plan.
That's how this is meant to work. You coming down from the north, you'd get to Dublin Airport and you'd be able to get on a metro at Dublin Airport into the city and do your show and get back, because they shouldn't stop. In the rest of Western Europe, the metros are going 24/7. They mightn't be busy, but they're going the whole time. So when the city wakes up in the morning,
but that's not what we do. What we do in this country, it's not carrot and stick; it's stick and carrot.
what we do in this country is let the likes of Eamon Ryan tell us that we all should be on bicycles 24/7 and dancing in the street without our shoes on. That's what we do in this country. Instead of
Did you see the video of him dancing in the street?
Well, that's why I referenced it. But I'm paying consultants hundreds of millions. Can you imagine how much consultants have been paid since 1973 to consult on a metro that not one train track has been laid on?
The funniest interview, sorry lads for keeping everybody, but the funniest interview I've ever heard was they were talking about the metro going back about 10 years ago in News Talk. I can't remember who it was, some minister. And he said it was, they asked him, is it a train? And this is the one they had planned to go to Swords. Do you remember that one? Is it a train? He says, when it runs in the middle of the road, we'll be building a special section in the middle of the road, widening all the roads down through Dorset Street. Yeah, but he says, is it a train? He says, well, it's kind of like a train, but with rubber wheels. And he says, is that not a bus? And he went, no, it's a train with rubber wheels. With rubber wheels. Basically what it was, similar to they have up here in Belfast, which is that kind of, I can't remember what they call it in Belfast. It's that.
Oh yeah, the buses that they have in Belfast, those long,
the bendy buses.
Windy buses.
Yeah.
Bendy buses. Yeah.
So they can only really go in they can turn bends, but they can't turn sharp bends. You know what I mean? So, but the Flyer, I think it's called, right? A very handy transport system, but that's essentially what it was, which is a bus. But their man kept saying it's a train. No, it's a train with rubber wheels.
But now, the one that confuses me the most is when they built the Port Tunnel. They had those machines that bored the Port Tunnel, and as far as I know, they buried the two.
That's right. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Like, why weren't those machines repurposed when the Port Tunnel was built?
They can't do it. I looked into that. I was so intrigued by that whole thing. It's too expensive to get them back out of the tunnel again. So what they do is, that happens all over the world with the bit of tunnel. What they do is when they get almost touching each other, one from each side, one goes one way, the other goes the other way, and they go down, and they bury them down.
So you're telling me no one in these multi-million euro machines for boring tunnels, no one thought to put a reverse gear into it?
Well, I don't think they do go into reverse. I need to remove them from the tunnel. The cost factor, it's cheaper just to build another one. The cost factor of removing them.
Fair enough, but
that went over budget. That was meant to be 2 billion, and it was 6 billion in the end, or something ridiculous.
I know it was crazy, Niall. And look, if you know, the sad fact is, if we've been talking about this since 1973, the chances that Dublin will ever get a metro or an underground are probably bloody slim at the moment.
Do you know what would have been wonderful if they had extended the tunnel? They could have had an exit at Dublin Port and extended it on through there, where you go back down again and over towards Dunleary under the bay. It would have been amazing. Yeah. Anyway, back to the real world. Okay, so but the plan is, Billy, to get rid of cars. So do you agree with a congestion charge?
No, as I said, until there's a proper public transport system in there, I think a congestion charge is.
William thinks people can well afford it.
Because I disagree. I agree with a lot of things William has said, but I disagree that people can well afford it, especially if you are.
Look at the average price of a car. Do you know people can afford?
But William, let me.
We're one of the wealthiest countries in the world. You understand
William,
that?
Give me a second, William. Right?
No problem.
Let's say we have a graduate nurse starting in that new children's hospital, and when it's built, right down by James's, on €23,000 a year, and let's say she's living in Maynooth or something like that, and has to travel into that children's hospital every day. So she's got to pay for parking in the hospital because their staff parking isn't free. She has to be in there for her shift starting at maybe 7 o'clock in the morning, and now you're expecting her to pay a congestion charge on top of all that.
I'm not.
So she, but William, how do you differentiate between people? Because if
let me speak. When you go to the doctor, for instance, he doesn't give you the same prescription for different ailments. No, it's a complicated thing. But like, for instance, you have, like in London, you get an allowance, the guards get an allowance, a living allowance for being in London and different things. There's a variety of things that can be done and should be done. So it has to be worked out. No one has all the answers. I don't have them. But what I'm saying is, we don't have all the answers, but we need to work a variety of different things in order to bring together something that works. We have to try our best, and we need clear thinking and people to put aside their own personal biases and their own personal looking after themselves to see what the greater good is for society.
William, I'm with you, but like we have a government there, and the living allowance was brought up by the teachers' union in the last couple of months, and Norma Foley, the Minister of Education, came out and said she would be against a living allowance for teachers in Dublin. Like, you have a government that doesn't want.
Yes.
You have a government that doesn't want to bring it in. And I guarantee.
But why not? Why don't they?
I guarantee you that if a living allowance or living wage is brought in for Dublin, you'll have a Cork waiting and you'll have a Limerick waiting. Because
I was going to say that.
Unions,
yes. No. Can you understand why?
But the unions will start to go nuts, because the unions will say, you can't treat one class of my member different than another class of my member.
Yes, I see that. We saw it with the Gardaí.
The point he's making is you can't expect people who are already pinned to the collar, nurses, well, maybe not doctors, they're quite wealthy, most of them, but certainly nurses, Garda Síochána, who are living in Dublin, working in Dublin, driving in and out of Dublin, to pay a tenner or 20 if it's 10 in and 10 out every day. You couldn't expect them to pay that.
Why not?
Oh,
because William, they're there 5 days a week. They're there 5 days a week.
I started off working myself.
But what about the patients, William, going into the hospitals that maybe have to go in with cancer treatments that are going to be there 5 days a week?
They have to be looked after. Of course they have. I'm not against that. I'm saying they should be.
So now hold on, William, just for a second. Yes. Now we're looking after the teachers, the nurses, the doctors, the guards, the patients that are coming in. So
you saying we should look after no one? What are you saying?
Well, you're kind of eliminating everybody here now. Is there anybody left?
We shouldn't look after no one, William. But like, we're eliminating a big group of people who will be paying.
No,
this
but it is a complex issue. What I'm saying is we have the richest country, one of the richest countries in the world now. We have the highest paid teachers.
You keep hold on for a second. We don't have the highest paid teachers. The second highest paid teachers in the EU. Not in the world, in the EU. But here's the thing, right? We might be a rich country or a wealthy country or a reasonably prosperous country, but that doesn't mean people have money. It means that business, particularly the multinationals, are doing well and paying quite a lot of tax into the government. That's what it means.
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily mean the average person is earning more money.
What we should be doing with that... What we should be doing with that tax...
Niall, is that what you're saying?
Sorry?
Are you saying times are bad? Is that what you're saying?
Times are bad for a lot of people, William.
They always have been bad.
But they shouldn't be. We shouldn't be happy with that. Okay, so hang on. Let Billy just finish what he was saying, because I'm going to break. Billy, come.
We never lived in such a wealthy country. We have never lived in such opulence and wealth. People know. My parents could only dream.
It's different time, William. A different time.
It's a different time. But
can't be comparing it. I know I do that now and again, by the way.
So are you saying we're not a wealthy country? Is that what you're saying?
No, I didn't say that. I'm talking about the people. Yes. Okay, well, hang on. Just let Billy respond to you. Go on, Billy. You can respond to that.
We are a very wealthy country comparatively to other nations in Europe. There's no disputing that. There's a lot of money in the economy. There's a lot of money in savings. Any economist worth his salt, and you can check with them, will say the best way to spend money to continue growth is in infrastructure. And if we're serious about continuing growth in this country, you need to take that money and you need to put it into infrastructure. And if we're serious about this green policy, and look, Niall, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I do think that we do need to invest in rail, and we do need to invest in metro and light rail in places like Dublin, and we need to connect the
real people, real opinions, real talk radio. The multi-award winning Niall Boylan Show.
McCarthy Insurance Group, serving the community for over 70 years. For home, farm, motor, life, health and business insurance, log on to mig.ie or free phone 1800 50 11 11. Probably your best call in 2024. Charles McCarthy Insurance is trading as McCarthy Insurance Group, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.